Hey there, welcome back friends. In our last video we have checked the beans overview and we were able to communicate with our managed bean, and apart from communicating we were able to set the properties and get the property very easily. Now if I show you the bean, here is the file user.java and the user is nothing but our entity class, our bean, and inside this class we have first name and last name which are nothing but our property. Alright, now using our JSP tag useBean, we were able to get the access of the bean, and using the property as getProperty and setProperty, we were able to update or read the information which is there in the property, which is cool. Now friends, if we check this piece of code, then definitely there is something known as a scope. Now the current scope is session. Now what exactly is a scope and how this impact on our working? Now friends, scope has impact on availability of your bean and visibility of your bean. Now let me show you the impact by executing this file. So in here is the current output. Currently we are executing this inside Eclipse itself. Now for example, I execute this setProperty.jsp file. In this case, the current values would be updated, values has been set, and if I refresh this page, definitely the values would be updated. Now for example, if again I navigate to this URL in a different web browser, what happens is the session is a new session now, and as a result the old values would be reflected. Now again, if I navigate to this URL where we are setting the property and set the property inside this web browser, then what would be the impact? Again the values would be set, and if we check, the values would be updated. Now again we can check this by visiting a yet another web browser, for example Opera web browser, and in here if I again navigate to get session property.jsp file, again the old values would be reflected. Now why we are getting old values whenever we are changing the web browser? The reason is very simple. This scope is based on browsing session. If a new browsing session would be created, then an entire new bean would be created in the background. So currently we are working with 3 independent bean. First independent bean is created for the web browser which is inside this Eclipse IDE, whereas the second independent bean is created for Google Chrome. Likewise, a yet another independent bean is created for Opera web browser. Let me show you. In here, let me refresh the page. There is no changes, but in our Google Chrome, the values are updated values. Alright, so now moving forward, for example, we would like to create a specific bean which is consistent throughout the entire application. Now in these kind of scenario, we have a yet another scope. Let me close these 2 files real quick and let me show you a yet another scope. Alright, so here are the files where we have made use of application scope. Now as the name suggests, application scope has impact on the entire application, and in fact this bean could be shared within the entire application. This application scope is the widest of all, and whenever we create a bean with the scope as application, only single bean would be created and the bean would be accessed, used within the application. Now in order to understand this particular scope, first of all let us restart our server. Now as we are restarting the web server, all the old beans would be truncated and a fresh copy of our application would be loaded in our web server. So now let us execute this get application property in our web server, and here is the output. Now definitely if I copy this URL and paste it on a web browser, then the output would be first name John and last name Joe, which is cool. Now let us execute this particular file, set application property, and in here let me execute this. Now we have set the property inside our Eclipse IDE, but the impact would be reflected on here as well. Let me copy this URL and paste it in a yet another web browser, and you would be able to see that the file has the updated records. The updated values are being reflected in here as well. So this is cool. Alright, so now let us navigate to Eclipse. Now definitely, what is a application scope? A single copy of a bean would be created in the memory, and that specific copy would be shared among entire application. You can make use of multiple different web browsers. You need not to worry about sessions or something like that, and your value would be consistent. Now moving forward, let us check a yet another scope, and the name of the scope is page. Let me show you. So the page scope is interesting, and in order to understand this page scope, again let us restart the web server real quick. So we will restart this one. This will take some time, and in the meantime let us close these tabs real quick. Alright, so now there are two files, get page property and set page property. Here are the two files, and take a note of the scope. Scope is page. Now for example, I execute this get page property. Here is the output, and now I try to set the page property. Here we go. And now I try to refresh. The impact would be nothing. Let me show you. Again, let me try to run the set page property. Ideally, the value needs to be updated, as the page is also giving us the message values has been set. But when we are trying to refresh the page where we are executing get page property.jsp file, we are not able to see the updated values. Likewise, if I quickly navigate to a web browser, for example Google Chrome, and try to run the get page property file, again there is no impact, and the reason is very simple. The reason is because we are making use of the scope as page. Now, as the name suggests, page scope is specific to that specific page only. And if we would like to see the impact on the page, definitely what we need to do, we need to bring the code to a specific single page only. So let me copy these two lines and paste it after this statement values has been set by adding a br tag first of all. Now we would be able to see the updated values on the page, right? And let us run this once again, and here is the output. Perfect. So what is the moral of the story? Definitely page scope is restricted to a specific page only, and whenever we make use of this page scope, a single bean is created per page. Understand this. So whenever we are making use of page scope, a specific, a unique bean would be created for that specific page only. Alright, so moving forward, we will check a yet another scope whose name is request scope, and as the name suggests, this scope is based on request object. Now friends, as the length of the video is pretty high, so we will end this video as of now, and we will continue our journey in our next video. I hope I have made myself clear. Thanks for watching and take care.